kinds of awesome information for amateur and budding professional photographers. We are super honored to have Frederick Van Johnson today talking to us about marketing strategies for photographers and the habits of highly effective photographers. Before we get started, I just want to thank iFi for sponsoring this webinar. For those of you who aren't familiar with iFi's products, iFi offers a cloud-based solution for your images and syncs them across all devices, and has Mobi cards that help turn any camera into a Wi-Fi enabled camera. So to check out any of those products and more, please visit iFi.com. Quickly, before I introduce Frederick, I'd like to just go over the logistics for everybody. We are going to do about a 60-minute presentation with Frederick, and then about a 30-minute Q&A. If you look at your GoToWebinar user interface on the lower right corner, there's a questions panel. That's the space for you to ask Frederick any questions during the webinar that you'd like to answer during that Q&A. So please submit them there. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Frederick Van Johnson. He's not only a professional photographer that knows his chops as an artist, but he's also a marketing consultant that's worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. So he's combining those two talents today to help everybody learn more about marketing their artistic work as a photographer. So Frederick, please take it away and welcome. It's good to have you.
Hey guys, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this webinar. I'm excited to share some of these things here. In this presentation, I've titled it, obviously, as you can see on your screen, 5 Habits of Highly Effective Photographers. And you know, that's a nod to Stephen Covey's book, 5 Habits. I think it's 5 Habits, or a number of habits of highly effective people. But I wanted to kind of drill it down, and as I was building this presentation, I was thinking, you know, if you boil it down to just a few things that people can do, since we have limited time here, just a few things that people can do to get, you know, some traction on this stuff, because it's complex and simple at the same time of how to market yourself and stay on top of things. So, you know, this first slide here is, you know, it's interesting because it is, you know, the idea of traffic, right? So the way that I look at this is, you know, many of us are stuck in traffic every single day. You know, we're running back and forth around, but we all know where we're going. Right, so everyone that's in traffic, unless you're just like, you know, I'm going to take a drive and, you know, I have no idea where I'm going to go, you know where you're going. So the fifth one, and this is kind of a David Letterman style countdown, the fifth habit, you know, counting down to 1, is that you should always be working towards goals. You know, so as you start thinking about marketing your business, as you start thinking about building up your social media or social network footprint, you should always know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, there's no way to get there. I mean, you don't jump in the car and just start driving and expect to get to an awesome location. You begin with the end in mind and then work your way there. So I want to talk about a little bit how to do that. So first of all, don't add to the rush hour traffic, right? So what does that mean? So rush hour traffic is, there's a ton of people out there already that are doing stuff, and you know, if you just jump in there with no idea. So an example of this is in social media. You know, I follow a number of people on, let's use Facebook as an example. I follow another number of people on Facebook, and there's a lot of noise in there and very few nuggets of gold in there. So, but the nuggets keep me coming back. So the first bullet here, don't add to the rush hour traffic, is if you're going to post something online, make sure you're posting something substantive that is working towards your goal, right? So that doesn't mean that you always need to be sort of business-minded and, you know, the person that's trying to make a buck every post that you put up there. But it does mean that even kind of tangentially, as you make these posts, in the back of your mind, people should know that, okay, this person is a professional photographer, this person is posting this because they think this is of value to me. Don't just post, you know, random things. Now, the caveat to that is you can post random things on your personal account, but if you are establishing a business account or a business page on Facebook, or you've established a business Twitter account, or, you know, something of that ilk, then on there you want to be, you know, friendly and happy and personable and approachable and all that, but at the same time there should always be a thread of I am a professional photographer and this is of value, because it's, in the end, it's your brand. The second bullet there is pick a goal and work towards it. Like I was saying in the beginning, you don't jump into traffic and just drive around, right? You know where you're going. And this is even more important. You guys, you would think that this is an obvious sort of thing. But what happens in photography is, or when photographers decide to make the jump into business, what happens is they look at other people, or they say, hey, look, this photographer over here is posting every hour. Especially if you're following somebody like, say, Guy Kawasaki or something. They're posting every 5 minutes, so I should post every 5 minutes. However, they may have different business goals than you have, so you may be doing yourself a disservice and alienating your audiences versus kind of what your ultimate goal would be, and that's to build a following or bring in customers. So yeah, bullet number 2, pick a goal and work towards it. Bullet number 3, build or model a business in your chosen genre. So this is easy. I mean, this is not, a lot of this stuff is not rocket science. There are thousands and thousands of photography businesses out there, some more successful than others. But if you look at someone that's doing something, or look at someone that is successful in the genre that you want to be in, I'm not saying to copy them. I'm saying to model them. So kind of look at what they're doing and say, okay, this is how they behave online. Their brand is in alignment with what my brand is, and I want to be kind of like them. So I'm going to do things similar to what they're doing. You don't need to do it exactly. Don't copy them, but just kind of model them. And it makes things easier because you don't have to like sit there with a blank piece of paper and figure everything out. You can look at what they're doing in terms of their email communications, in terms of their website look and feel, how they post on their website, their portfolio layout, how does that look, the frequency of posting on the social networks, all that stuff. So you can kind of get an idea of where you want to be and what you should be doing by looking at others that you find successful in your chosen genre. And then the last bullet here, what are your numbers? So basically what this is, it's look at where you, again, this is the whole idea of beginning with the end in mind. So look at where you want to be financially in your business. Begin with that number. And that's, you may have heard this in economics in high school or whatever, but when you're building this, when you're building a business, you need to say, okay, success at this phase looks like this. Success for me is $5,000 a month. Success for me is $10,000 a month. That's what it takes. Once you have that number, that's the end, right? So you work backwards. So what does it take to get to $10,000 a month? If I'm a wedding shooter, then I need to shoot X many weddings a month, and I need to charge this much. And I can afford this much website. I can afford all these different things. So, but that end number, as you're building a business, and we're not talking hobbies here, as you're building a business, that end number is what you're driving toward. So it really helps to put these things in your mind. And when you look at slide number 5, this is why the slide is in here, is because it's critical for you to have a clear idea of where you're going and what you want to do and how much you want to make before you start saying, hey, I'm in business, and hey, John Doe, what do you charge for a wedding? I don't know. What are you willing to pay me? Those kinds of conversations don't work. So start with this, begin with the end in mind, and then I think you'll feel better at night. You'll feel better at the end of the month when you look at what you did. A lot of this stuff informs what you're doing during the month as you operate your business, because you know where you're going, and it makes making decisions that much easier when you know where you're going. So that's number 5. So let's move towards this slide. Yeah, I just stuck this one in at the last minute because I wanted to talk about this. So the importance of email, right? So this could be a webinar all by itself. So email marketing for photographers could be a completely different webinar. Let me paint a picture for you. So you've built a website. You've built, and you post on it, you've built a social following, you've worked hard at it on Facebook, for example, and you've got all of your customers in your Facebook group, and you communicate with them, you're talking to them, you're posting back and forth to them. So that's great, and you should continue doing that. You have a Twitter account, so you got a couple thousand people or more, and that's growing, and you have a dialogue there, that's great too. and say you're on Pinterest, you're on Google Plus, you're on et cetera, et cetera. You're establishing your brand there. The problem with that, without introducing email marketing into the mix, is any one of those networks can change their terms of service at any time and go away, or your account goes away, or the business folds, or something. And if you put all your eggs into a third-party basket with one of these companies, and these are great companies, I'm not knocking them, but if you put all your eggs into one of those baskets, when they go away, your business suffers. And that one lifeline, or in this case, multiple, if you're using multiple social networks, um, that one lifeline or those multiple lifelines get severed, and now you have no way to contact your customers. Now, if you introduce email into the mix and think down the path, or with the metaphor of Rome, right? All roads lead to Rome. That's how the Roman Empire sort of built up, right? Rome's in the middle, everything else leads into Rome. If you think of your blog or your business website, most of them are blogs these days. If you look at your website as Rome and the social networks as cities outside of Rome that drive into, in other words, when you post on Facebook, yeah, do your normal posts. You're talking about so-and-so. Maybe you're writing an article about photography or some new piece of gear or some lighting technique or Photoshop technique, but a little snippet might go on Facebook. The full article with the videos and all that stuff lives on your website. So you're driving people back into your website and training them to come to your website from Facebook. Same with Twitter, same with G+, all these guys. In your head, you should have you are the center of your universe. You are your sun of your solar system. You are your sun, and these social networks are planets around your sun. So keep that in mind as you build this. So yeah, and that second bullet, email versus social media. So here's another example. Say you had you have a blog, and you haven't built an email list. Or let's say you have a blog and you have, let's do the glasses half full metaphor. So you have a blog and you have a nice email list, and you've been communicating with your customers and clients back and forth. You send them promotions and all that stuff. Then one day your blog gets hacked, or for some reason it goes down and it goes away. Without an email list, you're kind of out in the wind, right? Because even if you have a great social media following, you know how Facebook works, right? You don't know how many people are going to see a post that you put up there that says, hey, my blog is down, we'll be back. Or on Twitter, same thing. You don't know how many people are going to see that rolling, like I call Twitter kind of the never-ending roll of toilet paper, right? Because it's just rolling on and on and on and on. You might put a post on there, but in 5 minutes it's way downstream. No one's going to see it. So, it's great for the moment, but not in the long term. So you have that communication conduit that you had with your clients is severed when if your email, if your site goes down, you have no way of contacting those clients. Conversely, with email, your site goes down, you have your list of, say, 10,000, 5,000, whatever people on there that are your customers and loyal fans that want to hear from you. Now it's just you sitting down with your phone, your tablet, or your computer, typing out a quick message saying, hey guys, we are down for a minute and we'll be back up, yada, yada, yada. No harm, no foul. Or conversely, if you decide, you know what, I'm starting a new site and a new domain completely, I'm going to sell my old business, I'm going to start a new one, you can take your clients with you, because now you start your new site at brandnewdomain.com and you send out an email that says, hey, I just started a brand new site, it's amazing, go over here to check it out. I would love it if you guys come check it out and give me feedback. So that's the importance of email, and that goes with you everywhere. It's like, put in photography terms, it's like lenses versus camera bodies. You're going to switch camera bodies every whatever interval, year or whatever, but your lenses are always there. You're gonna maintain your lenses. Your glass is permanent. The camera bodies come and go. Same with email and social media. Email is permanent. These social networks come and go. So think of it like that. The third bullet there is establish a conversation. So this is critical. So with email, when you're talking to people, like as you guys learn more about email, and I would encourage you to dive in and look at tutorials online about email, and MailChimp and Aweber, Constant Contact, they all have really good resources online to sort of understand how email works and what it's for, and how to use it. But in a nutshell, the idea is to establish an ongoing conversation with your what they call an avatar. Now, an avatar is a person, not the movie. It's a person that represents your ideal client. And in my case, with This Week in Photo, the podcast that I host, I know who my ideal client is, or my ideal clients or listeners or fans are, and I have photos of a couple of people on my desk here that kind of represent who my ideal client is. And when I'm writing or when I'm recording a podcast or when I'm writing a tweet or Facebook post or whatever, I glance over and it helps me ensure that I'm speaking in the vernacular that that person will understand. I'm not speaking, you know, too low or too high or whatever. I'm speaking to peers that are like me, and it helps to do that. Otherwise, when you're establishing that conversation and you're writing your emails, whether they're automated emails that go out or instant emails that you send off right at the moment, you at least me, I don't know about you, but at least me, when I'm writing, I tend to get verbose and I use words that I would never ever use in a normal conversation, and it's like, really? Did I really just write that? This is not a textbook. So, but if you have that target person or that avatar in mind, it helps you speak in a conversational tone to them, and you use words like, that you would use in a normal conversation versus what you would write if you were applying for a business loan or something. So establish a conversation. And that last bullet, jab, jab, right hook. So that's the title of a book by Gary Vaynerchuk. He's one of my, like, I look to him as like, okay, this is how it's done in the world of social media. And he wrote this amazing book called Jab, Jab, Right Hook. I think it's jab, jab. Might be 3 jabs in there, but you'll find it. And what that means is what he's getting at with jab, jab, right hook is when you're communicating with people and you're in business, because let's face it, you're on this webinar because you're in business or you want to be in business. But when you're communicating with people online, you don't want to be the guy that's selling all the time or the woman that's always promoting something all the time. That's like going to a party. Like, social media is a party, right? It's like going to a party full of people that you barely know and you haven't met, and you show up, with a sign that says, "Hey, hire me, I'm a photographer," or, one of those, outside dancing signs that, where people hold them and you show up at the party doing that. That's what happens if you immediately go into a social media conversation on one of these networks and start saying, "Hey, go check this out, go buy this, go hire me here." So the jab, jab, right hook is you want to give, and my metaphor, Gary uses jab, jab, right hook. I use give, ask. So you want to give information, curate interesting posts and techniques, and hey, look at this YouTube video I found that shows how to do this, and hey, look at this article from this blog that did this. Hey, I found this on this podcast. So you're giving information to the people, again, to your avatar. So you're giving, and then the right hook or the ask comes in that's where you sell something. So let's put this in perspective. Let's say you wrote an ebook on posing techniques for wedding photographers, and you want to sell that. You're online and you're posting, so the jab or the give might be, one post might be, hey, I found this cool video on how to pose people, and the next one might be, hey, look at this stupid video I found of this drone flying into the bride and groom, or, things like that. And then the right hook might be, hey, we just put together this awesome ebook we thought you guys might enjoy. Go check it out. So now people are in a receptive state of mind. They know that your posts aren't all salesy and promotional and all that, and they're more apt to look at you as, okay, that other stuff was valuable, so this is probably valuable too. Let me go check it out. So that's the jab, jab, right hook. And I would encourage you to check out Gary Vaynerchuk's stuff, and particularly this book. I bought this book, and it's on my Kindle, and and I also bought the hardcover because I like to dog ear pages and throw it around and get it all messed up. So definitely check that out. So Let's move on to the next slide. So this one, obviously a picture of a hard drive, but what could that mean? So what this means is create and record your processes. So this is important. So as we build things, like with me, for example, I'm building the network, the This Week in Photo or the TWIP network. There are a million moving pieces that go along with putting out a network, many of which I had no idea what they were, before I started doing them. I mean, there's logistics around recording shows and editing shows and managing hosts and paying hosts and advertising and making sure everything is scheduled properly and reporting back to the I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's all these different processes that are involved with this stuff, with building your business. But the good news is, and when I figured this piece out, and I figured this piece out by reading, business books and all that, but the good news is once you figure it out once, you can repeat it over and over again. Some people that aren't successful or haven't figured it out yet will continue to like reinvent the wheel every single time. Like the experienced traveler, once you travel once or twice, you're like, okay, let me make a list of things that I need because I keep forgetting the toothpaste and I keep forgetting this and I never have the right clothes, so let me make a list of the core things I need. Once you make that list, every time you travel, you look at that list, you check everything off, and you have a better trip for it. In this instance, like in business, so say back to the email example, say you're sending an email, there are steps involved with sending that email. You got to figure out the list that you're going to send it to. You got to figure out what the title of it's going to be. You got to figure out what the body is going to be. Are you going to put an image in there? So all these things need to be addressed. You don't want to have to tax your brain with this stuff over and over again if you don't have to. So what I do in my business is I have a series of Google Docs. Well, we use a couple of different services. We use a service called Asana, A-S-A-N-A, and we also use Google Docs. So with Asana, it's kind of a glorified task management software as a service application or in the cloud. So, and all of us, I think right now the TWIP network is comprised of about 30 individuals, including editors and IT people and all that stuff, and we're all remote. So we use this tool to keep us all on the same page, and I use it to show people, okay, when you're putting a show out, these are the steps to how you put a show out. So I figured it out once, then I repeat. Number two, store it online for team members. Like I was just saying, with Asana and Google Docs, you can store these things online so that you're not like, okay, I've got on my desktop, let me email them to this person and that person, and then you have the whole problem of versioning. So you made a change, this person didn't get the change, so they're doing it the old way, vice versa. If you store these documents online and give people access to them, you can do number 4, refine and iterate. So once you figure it out once and you're repeating it, you're going to find loose ends and rough edges that you can polish off and make this better and better and better as you move forward. And you can use this in all corners of your business, whether it's marketing or even photography, right? You're setting up lighting on location for a shoot. It's a process. Document it. Don't try to keep this stuff in your head because we're all getting older, right? So, and as we get older, the memory starts failing. But if you capture this stuff, it's forever. And if you need to train someone, you don't need to go through the process of, okay, let me show you how to do this thing. You just say, okay, here's access to this document. Let's walk through it. Boom, you got it. So that's number 4. Create and record your processes. I think it's really important to do that. All right, let's move on. So I love these pretty pictures I put in here just to add a little interlude into the presentation. So number 3, do not chase the horizon. And this, we as photographers we're notorious for this, right? This is what we do. We chase the horizon. We look for the latest and greatest piece of gear. There's a new social network out, so we need to go try that, and we end up getting frazzled, and we end up getting kind of, I don't know, what's the word? We're never focused. I remember back in the day, even with cameras and camera gear, you get a camera and you keep it for, I don't know, 5 years or more. You'd learn every little nuance of that camera. You'd learn the ins and outs of it. You know where every little ding and scratch came from on that camera. You'd become intimate with it. But nowadays we're not. We've become kind of a culture or a profession that's in search of that horizon. We're chasing the horizon. We're looking for the next perfect gear, and some of us use it as an excuse, right? So it's like, hey, I could be as good as Joe McNally or Lindsay Adler if I only had the lighting equipment and the gear that they use, right? Which is not true. They're good because they're like James Bond. I use James Bond as an example of this. They're good because James Bond is good because, or the character of James Bond is good because he could be in any situation and he can get out of it with whatever he finds around. He doesn't need his special gun or car or whatever. He gets out of all these situations. Same with photographers. If you understand the concepts of marketing, the concepts of photography and all this, you should be able to do the right thing, right? So number one on this list is in search of the perfect, right? Most people are in search of the perfect something. You're like in the context of this presentation, when you guys start looking into email tools, you're going to be in search of the perfect email tool. You're in search of the perfect social network and all this stuff. Don't find something and stick to it. Number two, tools and services are changing faster than you can keep up with. And the problem with that is it's great because I love change and I love new tools and new toys and all that stuff. But the problem with let's take the services for an example. The problem with the innovations and the changes are, if you go back to the number 4 slide of building the processes, you're building processes on top of these things that keep changing. If you keep adopting new things, then you're back to the drawing board again in terms of trying to understand and build replicable processes. So I'm not saying don't, I am saying don't on the slide, but don't shut yourself off. You don't need to work with blinders on, but you have to keep your eye on the ball. Remember, slide number 5 was that goal. Keep that goal in mind. If you keep that goal in mind, all this other stuff kind of falls into place, because you can say, well, I'm trying to get there and I need this much money a month. Does this tool or service help me get there or stop me from getting there? In psychology, they say humans or mammals or life forms in general are basically doing 2 things all the time. You're either trying to move closer to pleasure or further away from pain, right? So same thing with your business. You are trying to move closer to profitability and further away from being broke, So that's how the line works. And then number 3 on this in this list is it's about the art. I mean, we're all photographers. Most of us on this call are photographers. We love photography. Don't lose sight of that, right? So even as you dive into this business, into the business side of things, and you start learning about, say WordPress or Squarespace or whatever web host you need to learn, and then there's the email piece of it, and then there's how to write a blog post, and there's the frequency, and then all these social networks and all that stuff. Keep in mind always that even as you write your blog posts and your tweets and all that stuff, it's about the art of photography. In the end, that's why you're doing this, is because you love photography. And if you get sidetracked from that, and the photography starts becoming less fun and less enjoyable to you, it's a ripple effect. Then the rest of this stuff will be like, oh, why am I doing this? What's it all for? And then it's a downhill effect from there. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that it's about the art. And then again, work backward, right? So if you have the gear that you need, or you have decent gear right now, don't get sucked into the vortex of, I need to get something else in order to get this kind of a sunset shot, or whatever. Just be an artist, suffer, make it good, use what you have. Same with these tools. Once you settle on, like, say, a blogging tool or an emailing tool or whatever, social networks, learn it, understand it, get deep with it. I mean, in the case of, say, Facebook marketing, which could be a whole nother webinar, Facebook marketing, you dive into that world and you start peeling back the layers of the onion of what you can do with Facebook, it becomes amazing. I mean, you get sucked in because there's so much that you can do as a marketer just on Facebook to tap into their audiences. So dive in, don't spread yourself thin and, You know, like when you're a kid and you're trying to burn a leaf with a magnifying glass by focusing the sun's rays. Remember that? You can't burn that leaf unless you focus the rays exactly right into one point. Then you can burn it. Same with this stuff. You can't burn a leaf or get profitable in your business unless you're really, really focused and keep your eye on the ball. So this next one is about learning, you know. So again, back to the title, 5 habits. Number 2, a habit of highly successful photographers is that they're always learning. We're always learning new stuff. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I was a nerd as a kid, but I was in the library because this is pre-internet. I was in the library. I was, you know, always, and when I was in the library, it was the nonfiction area and the how-to books. You know, how to build a go-kart, how to build a bird cage, how to do this. I was that kid, and it's followed me to today. So I'm always learning today. I'm always like on YouTube, there's like mountains and years of content and on any conceivable topic that you could possibly want on YouTube. There's just a ton of stuff that you could just, you know, learn and dive into. And so that's what that's the number 2 suggestion here, and it's always be learning. Number 1, learn your tools. Like I was saying in that last slide, get intimate with your tools, understand them, understand your online tools, your business tools, dive in there. Don't get frustrated, because a lot of people get frustrated with this stuff because it can be a hill, you know, and it's complicated. But once you get to the crest of that hill, you got it, and it's in your tool belt. Same with this email stuff and WordPress and all this. A little repetition goes a long way. Once you learn them, you got it, and it's yours forever. Once you learn how to do, like, say, webinars with GoToWebinar, you got it. It's in your tool belt, and you know how to do it. Once you build a podcast, you got it, and now you can rinse and repeat and do it over and over and over again. So learn your tools and try to develop that thirst of learning and absorbing things and trying new things. Number 2, Facebook and Twitter. I touched on that a little bit in the last slide, and that's Facebook. You know, both of these services, they're obviously advertising supported, but there's tons of things that you can do in terms of advertising your business on Twitter and Facebook. And I would suggest, you know, after this webinar, when you have time, jump on YouTube and do a search for Facebook marketing. That's it. Facebook marketing, and then do one for Twitter marketing. There are entire playlists that people have put together on Facebook and Twitter marketing for free that you can sit down or stand up with your device or listen to while you're on your jog or whatever, that will start peeling back those onions of how this stuff works and how you can use Facebook and Twitter to drive business to or drive customers and clients to your business, either your page or even locally. Because with both of these businesses, specifically Facebook, you can target geographically. So you can build a geofence around your target demo or your target geographical area that you want to serve. Say you're a studio, you know, a terrestrial brick and mortar studio. You can say only in these 5 zip codes do I want to advertise, and only to these people that are of this income level and of this sex and of this marital status, and on and on and on. You can drill down to minutia. And as you drill down, Facebook gives you a running total of how many people you're going to reach and how much it's going to cost to reach those people. Then you buy it, and you're reaching those people. So it's, you know, it seems complicated, but it's once you do. So definitely dive into those and learn those. It's really important. Number 3 is video. So video, I think, who was it? Mark Zuckerberg, CEO, founder of Facebook, said that he expects within the next 2 years video to be the dominant way on Facebook that people are sharing content. You know, so which says a whole lot, because Facebook is number 1. Say Facebook is kind of becoming synonymous with the internet, Facebook and Google. So if you don't understand video, you don't need to become a Michael Bay or an Alfred Hitchcock or whatever, you know. You just understand how to use video, you know, and again, dive in a little bit, peel back that layer of the onion a little bit on how these new services work, like Periscope, for example. Understand how to throw your video on Instagram, and what kind of Instagram videos do people want to see, and how do you get the message about your business out that way. And remember, if we go back, that whole jab, jab, right hook piece of it, same goes for video. Content. Give good, not promotional content or non-promotional content. Keep doing that, and then every now and then intersperse something that's promotional, in there. I call that wrapping the pill in bacon. Like if you're trying to give your dog a pill or your pet a pill, if you wrap it in bacon, they'll eat it, right? And they won't be any the wiser. Same with this stuff. If you wrap your content in great tasting, bacon, like, okay, here's a post on YouTube, and here's this cool thing I found over on Twitter, those kind of things, and then insert the pill in there, which is, I'm running a special on my site, or hire me and I'll give you this free, or that kind of thing. Then it's easier to swallow that pill. So keep that in mind. Don't be overly promotional. Every other post is buy this, buy that, go check this out, new ebook for sale. And then number 5, I skipped 4 on this. Sorry about that. Number 5, embrace and extend. That was something that I think Bill Gates or Microsoft used to say back in the day. It's and I don't. When they said it, they meant they were copying other people, and taking their ideas and doing something better. But when you look at things today, embrace, extend means, I think Apple, what Steve Jobs said, like Bill Gates said, embrace and extend. Steve Jobs would say something like, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So it's the same kind of thing. As you build your thing and you're learning these new services and you're trying things, embrace them and extend them into what you need them to be. Look at what other people are doing. Embrace and extend what they're doing. So, and above all, have fun with this stuff. I mean, this stuff, never in at least my short time on this planet have we had so many tools that were so cheap for us to build businesses. I mean, I'm sitting right now in my home office here and talking to you guys, hundreds of people right now from my home office in my shorts and t-shirt, explaining to you this cool stuff, right? This wasn't possible, 5 years ago for me to do this. For me to build the business that I've built with This Week in Photo and the This Week in Photo Network, that was not possible just 5 years ago. And now I'm able to build this world-class media property that's respected all over the globe from my home office, using tools that all of you have access to right now, right? So there's nothing, in the case of This Week in Photo, there's nothing that goes into that site. There's nothing custom. There's nothing that I had built custom. There's nothing that I found some secret vein of technology and I'm exploiting it. None of that. It was all off the rack stuff. And you have access to all this stuff too, with Facebook, with Twitter, with Google Plus Hangouts and Google Photos and WordPress, all these different things. All you need to do is look at what other people are doing that are kind of in your chosen business and kind of how you want your business to be perceived, and then embrace and extend that. When I look at brands that I like, I'm looking at BBC, when, speaking specifically about the podcast network, I'm looking at BBC, I'm looking at, to some degree, CNN, I'm looking at NPR, and I see those guys and kind of what they're doing, and I'm not copying, obviously, but I'm like, okay, I'm modeling them a little bit. I'm looking at what Leo Laporte on This Week in Tech network is doing, a huge mentor of mine, and I'm saying, okay, how do I do something similar to that, but with my spin on it? And that's what you want to do, in your business. Always be learning, always be looking at other people, but don't run your race looking left and right. I was talking to someone the other day. You don't win a race by looking at the people that are running against you to the left and the right. You win the race by looking forward and keeping your eye on the ball, and in the case of this presentation, always learning and keeping yourself fresh and excited about what's going on. All right. I'm a big universe kind of person, and this goes to what we talked about in that first, I think I was talking about kind of how your blog is the sun and the social networks are the planets. This is kind of a representation about that. So the idea here is that you want to have a methodology and not necessarily a strategy. And to some people that might be heresy, right? It's like, of course, you have to have a strategy for everything, or else how can you get there? It's a kind of interesting nuance, because having a methodology or a mindset versus a rigid, okay, I must do this and I must do that for my business, as you think about building this thing, it helps you have an overall idea. And this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about all roads leading to your blog, right? So you want to build, like, I can't stress that enough. Build whatever you're building, your social presence online, your blog, everything that you do online. Figure out why you're doing it. First of all, like we were saying in slide number 5, figure out what your goal is. Why are you even doing this? It could be, if you soul search a little bit and you think about it, you're like, okay, am I doing this because I just want to be popular? I want I want a lot of followers because I hear that's important, and that's my metric, and I feel better if I get more followers on Facebook. That's fine if that's your goal, but acknowledge that that's your goal, and everything you do should be aimed at getting more followers. However, if your goal is to say you're a portrait photographer and your goal is to get more clients, know that by getting more clients and posting about frogs or political things or you know whatever, the elections, that stuff isn't not necessarily going to attract the people that you're looking for your blog, or for your business. So just keep that in mind as you build this. Your blog is the sun, and all roads are leading into it. Keep that metaphor in mind, and also keep the idea of email being that main and most important permanent conduit to your customer base. If you don't have an email list right now, build it. Go to MailChimp.com. That's what I use. There's also Aweber, Constant Contact, Mad Mimi. It goes on and on. So make sure you do that. Number 2, always experiment. No fear, right? So a good friend of mine, Trey Radcliffe, he's the epitome of number 2 here. He's always experimenting. He's always leaning into new things that show up. Like when Ello, the new social network, showed up, he was one of the first people on there, and he's just experimenting and leaning into it and trying it and seeing how it's going to work. It's not so much about staking your claim and grabbing your name on there. I mean, that's a part of it, obviously, but it's about leaning into things and don't fall into the curmudgeon trap of, oh, geez, not another social network, oh, not another tool. On one hand, you want to focus, stay on your road, stay on your path, but on the other hand, you also, in the periphery, be cognizant of what's going on. Don't stick your head in the sand and say, you know what, I'm only going to focus on these things over here, and that's all. I don't care what's happening over there. I'm going to do this stuff. You want to do a little bit of that, but at the same time, you want to be aware of what's happening, because if something happens outside of your bubble, then that could positively impact your business, and you've been so focused on your business that you weren't able to exploit it or jump on that train, then you lose. So it's an interesting dance in the internet world, and especially with photography, because all this stuff is always changing. It's almost like building a house on lava. The stuff just keeps moving, but you have to be cognizant of what's happening, or else you might lose out. And then number 3, practice reckless abandon. And that goes with number 2. Just try stuff. It may fail, and this goes throughout all your business activities. Send emails out. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail over and over and over again. Then you're going to succeed. Just keep trying stuff. Get into the mindset of trying, experimenting, poking holes in things. There's a new thing. Give yourself the permission to try stuff, but at the same time, stay focused and on point, because you're building a business and you have numbers that you're trying to hit on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, give yourself some permission to play around and see what's out there. All right, so just to recap all of this stuff as we come to a close here. So number 1, have a methodology, right? That's the end. Number 2, never stop learning. You're going to always just keep in that mindset. You should always have a bunch of new podcasts on your phone. You should have audio books on there, ebooks. Whenever you have some downtime, just be learning stuff that relates not random stuff, stuff that relates to what you like doing in business. Like if you, like after this, hopefully after this presentation, if you haven't already started building that email list, go start learning about email list and email marketing specifically. Good place to start doing that, YouTube. Jump on YouTube, type in Facebook marketing, type in email marketing, type in Twitter marketing, and you will be surprised at how many resources are there from people that know much more than you or I already, that have put these videos up there to train you. So just dive in and start using the resources that you have. Number 3 was stop chasing the horizon. And that goes for gear. On one of our shows on the TWIP network called All About the Gear, we have this acronym called GAS, and I think it's used, I'm sure we didn't come up with it, but it's called GAS. It's called Gear Acquisition Syndrome. It's when you are always looking at the next piece of gear. I'm guilty of it too, because these new cameras keep coming out with awesome low light sensitivity and image stabilization and 4K video and all this stuff, and every time one comes out, I get the devil and the angel on my shoulders, and one of them's like, the devil's like, go get it. You got money. You got some extra change. Go get it. You deserve it, Frederick. Go get it. And then on my other shoulder, the angel is like, dude, you haven't learned how to use the stuff you already have. Why don't you learn what you have before you start looking at getting something brand new? You still have the box for the other camera. Start learning. Learn to be a better photographer instead of a better consumer. So that's number 3. Stop chasing the horizon. And then number 4, back your data up, and that goes along with the having the processes in place. Make sure you have processes and you're backing stuff up. And then number 5 is aim for goals, right? That was the first one we started with. We were working backwards. You want to aim for goals. Sit down. I would suggest today, sit down, think about what you want to do. What is your definition of success, both business-wise and as an artist? What, for you to be the artist that you want to be, what does that look like? That's the end goal, and then work backwards from there. And that works for everything. What kind of house do you want to live in? What's your ultimate house? What's the ultimate car that you want to be driving? What's the number, the dollar amount that you need to be making a month for you and your family to be comfortable or thrive instead of survive, right? So pick what those goals are, and I would just even write them down. Get them out of your head so that you can solidify them. Business goals as well. This you can niche this down into even Facebook and say, okay, I've got 500 followers today. For me to feel like a success on Facebook, I need 5,000. Right? Okay, now how do I get 5,000? Let me jump online on YouTube or whatever, or on lynda.com, wherever. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out what it means to get 5,000. And I wanted to end, as we end this, I want to end this with, a huge thanks to the i5 folks for having me on to do this, because I use I'm friends with the i5 folks, and I know them very well, and I've known them for years, and I've been that photographer that likes to, I think the iFi card is one of those tools that you have to kind of get in your brain to understand, right? You have to try it and understand the benefits that it's giving you as a shoot, press the button and then my images are automatically showing up in my phone kind of deal, and it kind of changes the way you think about things. And it's one of those, when I discovered them, it went back to like the whole number 2, never stop learning and all that. I'm like, okay, what is this and how can it benefit me? How can this tool help me push the ball forward as the kind of photographer that I want to be? And I figured it out. It's like, okay, this absolutely helps me do stuff that I never could do before. So I would definitely suggest you guys check them out. They're good people over there. They're trying to do really good things, and they have some really interesting plans in the works that goes towards helping photographers do what they love doing better, faster, and stronger. So definitely check out their site. And I think that's it. That's the end of my presentation, 5 habits of highly effective photographers. I think we're going to move over to a Q&A session now, and kind of hopefully I've answered a bunch of questions during the presentation, but I'm happy to answer more if you guys have anything to ask me.
Beautiful, Frederick. Thank you. Excellent presentation. And yeah, folks have questions. So just a reminder, to anybody out there that has marketing questions, go ahead and send them to us through that questions panel on the bottom right corner. But let's dive in. So we have a question from Jared. He says, everyone with a smartphone is a photographer nowadays. How does one keep relevant in that genre?
That's great. Well, that's actually two questions. So, cell phones are ubiquitous, but I think of that question. I think of kind of like back in the day when they call it the desktop printer revolution, when suddenly everyone was a graphic designer. And what that led to was a lot of bad design, because not everyone was a graphic. They had the tools that graphic designers had, but they didn't have the skills that graphic designers had. So same with today. Everyone can have a camera, yeah, no problem. But just because you have a scalpel doesn't make you a surgeon, right? You have to understand the concepts of lighting and exposure and composition and all these things in order to actually create good art and understand how to do it. It's not just, snapping a photo. A cell phone, everyone having a cell phone camera means everyone can take snapshots, which is totally fine. Not everyone is making photographs.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, let's go to Lewis. He says, besides sharing goal-oriented content, what best practices are there for growing your social media following?
For growing your following, so it depends on. That's a really good question. There's more than two answers, but I'm going to give you two answers to that. So there's the organic way that would be just always, post good content and build your audience organically, as people will automatically gravitate to you if you're posting good stuff, So I would say make sure you're posting. Remember that jab, right hook. So be jabbing a lot online and doing good stuff and not flooding people's feeds with nonsense. So that's one way. Good content, putting good content out there. But there's other ways to build your social media. So say you want to build your Facebook follower count rapidly. Now, again, another webinar completely, but one trick to do that is you can purchase Facebook likes on Facebook. So you can run an ad campaign, and instead of when you run the ad campaign, there's a toggle in there that says, okay, do you want to generate click-throughs? That means you want people to click through to your website, or do you want to generate likes? So you can do either one of those. So that's a really quick way to build it. I mean, it's not free, obviously, but you can build it. One secret way, not secret, but one interesting way to do that is, I know some people online, when say you're building a Facebook page, and as we know, you look at a Facebook page, and if it only has 12 likes or 12 follows or whatever, in your mind you're gonna put it lower in terms of importance, as opposed to a page that has 12,000 or 120,000 likes or followers on it. So how do you go from one to the other? How do you jump from one to the other without being some highfalutin celebrity or a politician or whatever? What some people do is you can run an ad campaign on Facebook and make it a like campaign instead of a click-through campaign. But instead of targeting the expensive companies, like say the United States and Europe, and these are places where click-throughs or running ads on Facebook is really expensive. You run it in other places around the world that it isn't so expensive, but they also have widespread internet access. Now remember, you're not, in the case of just building your following, in this case, or the perceived value of your page, you don't really care if they're, you're just looking for a bigger number on there, so that when you start marketing to photographers, they look at it and they say, oh wow, there's a lot of people following this guy, I have to follow him too. So the phase one would be build that number. You don't care how you build a number, you just want to build it. So you advertise your Facebook campaign in countries that the ad rate is lower than in the United States or Canada, etc. And then once you built that up, it might cost you a couple $100 to get a good following. Once you've built that up, then you switch your ad campaign to local, right? So now you start advertising to your target customer demographic, and when they come see your page, they say, oh wow, he must be important or she must be really good. There's 100,000 people following them. So a number is a number. It doesn't matter. And these kinds of tips, those little tricks and the ways that people use and market on Facebook, there's hundreds of little tips and tricks like that, and they're all online for free. You can find them for free. You don't have to pay consultants. You don't have to buy expensive books and courses. I would just suggest sitting down on YouTube, do a little sifting, favorite a bunch of, or mark a bunch of videos as watch later, get yourself a cup of coffee, and go to town.
Okay. So from James, he wants to know how much to set aside each month for marketing. Is there a percentage that you recommend?
How much to set aside each month for marketing? That's a hard question because it depends, right? It depends on where your business is. You may not have any money right now, so 0% of zero is nothing, right? So, I think it's a case-by-case basis, and you have to answer that question for yourself, right? So you have to go back and say, remember in slide 5, what are my goals and what am I trying to do? If this is a full business for you and you have goals to make X amount of money by the end of the year, obviously you're going to set aside a much higher percentage of your net revenue than you would if you were just, this is a hobby and I may sell a print here and there. I'm learning how to market, but it's, I make my money because I work in a high-tech company in Silicon Valley. So it varies and it depends on what your goals are. I don't think there's people that say that there's a specific percentage of revenue that you should be attributing to marketing. That's chasing clouds. It's all subjective, and it's based on what your overall goals are and what you're trying to do.
Perinya wants to know, how can a photographer gain recognition on other people's blogs, and is that important in the whole marketing scheme of things?
Great question. Yes, that's a concept of guest posting. In fact, we're going to be turning on guest posting on This Week in Photo really soon. So contact me if you'd like to write for This Week in Photo. So the idea of guest posting is it's really powerful, and people have been doing it since the advent of blogs. And that's that the issue is people that own blogs, particularly popular blogs, are constantly on the search for content, kind of like a whale that's always looking. You got to ingest so much plankton every day in order to stay alive. Same thing with these big blogs. They have to ingest so much content, or else they kind of fizzle and go away. So you swing in saying that, hey, I am a subject matter expert in this area, and I would love to write for your blog. Send them a note through their contact form or email, and just say, I would love to write for your blog. I would like, this is a list of 5 articles that I feel like I could contribute. I will send you these articles along with sample or example imagery to go along with it. And at the bottom of it, there's obviously, remember, all roads lead to Rome. At the bottom is a link back to your website. So you win times 2. So you win if they accept your articles into their site. You win because your name is now associated with a much more popular site than yours. But then you also win because you're getting that traffic, presumably, because they obviously will have more traffic than you. So you're getting that traffic back to your site. And then obviously once they're on your site, you can try to get them on your email list so that they're sticky and you can contact them one-on-one later. So yeah, so I would definitely suggest guest blogging and guest posting whenever you can. Just find the blogs that you like and contact them and say, hey, can I write for you? And 9 times out of 10, they'll probably say yes.
Thomas wants to know this, like, what if you're an editorial or commercial photographer and you're trying to reach a highly selective clientele that are more difficult to get their attention? What are some good strategies for that approach?
Yeah, that's interesting, because then it goes away from social media somewhat. I mean, you could try social media and reach out to them. In fact, lots of people, like, say you want to target one, or you want to reach one particular person. The way that a lot of people do it online is, again, it goes back to communication and building up the lines of communication with people. So the good thing about Twitter and Facebook, or particularly Twitter, you can reference somebody and they will see it. Whether it's a celebrity or whatever, you can reference them, and 9 times out of 10 they will see what you said about them. So if you start doing that, referencing people and talking about them online so they start seeing your name. And then secondly, when you're on your own blog, there's on the internet, there's this whole concept of trackbacks. So if you link to somebody or mention somebody, chances are they will see that. So if you do that a couple of times, either there's this famous photographer that you want to build up a rapport with, or a client of some sort you want to build up a rapport with, you can start mentioning them online, and then they will see that. Then when you reach out to them directly, either through their contact form or through an email or something, they will 9 times out of 10 say, oh, you were that person that wrote that article about me, and they're more apt to have a conversation with you than if you were just some random person, off the street that approached them. So I would do that. That's number one. The second thing is, it's still not unheard. It's not. I've never done this, but a lot of businesses do it still, and that's the whole concept of renting lists. It's kind of frowned on in the internet marketing space unless you're doing something nefarious, but sometimes it makes sense. So, in the case of, okay, you say you're building a business and you want to target all gallery owners in New York City, you can get that list of people and market to them directly. But if you do that, or if you do something like that, make sure you proceed with extreme caution, because it's a double-edged sword that you can easily slip off of. And when you out of the blue solicit people, I know for me personally, when I get emails out of the blue, I will immediately mark them as spam unless they are really substantive or they make sense to me, especially if they're bulk emails. Like with these people, like to your question, if you are, in the case of the gallery owners, for example, say there's 35 galleries. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. There are 35 galleries in New York that you want to contact. I would get that list, and then I would write to each one of them individually and personally and send a message to them instead of writing one email saying, dear sir or madam, and that will increase your chances of getting a good response out of them.
Annabelle asks a related question here about email, because I think you're talking about the importance of people opting in and actually wanting to hear from you in some cases. Because she says, what would a portrait photographer use email lists for? Aren't people tired of countless newsletters piling up in their accounts?
Yeah, that's great. They are. And the thing is, they don't have to be newsletters. So here's an example. You don't have to. So you could build an email list, and on your site, you say, hey, sign up for my newsletter. Yeah, no one. To be honest, no one wants a newsletter anymore. But you could do something like, hey, sign up for my list, and if you're a portrait photographer, you could say, sign up for my list, and I will send you my PDF that has 10 awesome tips for taking pictures of your child's birthday party, or I'll give you access to this video, or every holiday, sign up to my list, and every holiday I'll send you some awesome tips on how to photograph that holiday, whether it be the 4th of July or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. We'll send you tips on how to do that. So you're giving them something of value. It doesn't necessarily have to be yet another newsletter. It could be any sort of digital content that they're signing up for.
Okay, here's a different kind of question from Rodrigo. What about liberating photos with a Creative Commons license in order to be more known to potential clients?
Read that question one more time. I didn't catch the first part.
Basically, like allowing your photos to be part of the Creative Commons license pool. Do you recommend that? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I do that as well. One of my friends, actually a couple of my friends do that, and I do it as well. Trey Radcliffe, Trey's interesting because he'll put gigantic images online that that could very easily be used in print. And his mindset, which I tend to agree with, is if people are going to steal your images, they're going to steal your images. The people that just want to see your work because they appreciate it, you want to show it to them in its best possible light. So he doesn't subscribe to the whole, I got to watermark everything. I'm going to watermark in the middle of all my images with my logo, or my URL has to be everywhere on there. He takes the opposite tack. He takes the, kind of the non-DRM tack, that the world is basically full of good people with a contingent of bad people. So if you play to the good people, they will take care of you, and the rounding error will be the bad people. So yeah, I would suggest, yeah, Creative Commons, definitely do that. And I try not to pay too much attention to the theft of images and that kind of thing. I know, I do the due diligence of copywriting my images and all that, but I am not policing and litigating and looking for, who did this with that and all that. For me, life is too short, and I'm too busy trying to build cool stuff and make cool stuff and learn cool stuff to be mired in the bad parts of the world. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Okay, there's a related question from Charles. He wants to know the copyright implications of social media. For example, doesn't Facebook own the rights to any photos uploaded to it?
Yes. Yes, yeah, it does. And it's a great question, because this week, I think tomorrow, for This Week in Photo, I'm recording an interview with Ed Greenberg and Jack Resnicki, who wrote the book on copyright for photographers. And one of the sections in that book goes in depth on social media and what happens when you share your images on social media, specifically the terms of service that you're referring to. So yeah, in a nutshell, yes. When you put your images on social media, you're granting rights to that agency to do whatever they want with them. Secondly, the other piece of that, and first of all, I'm not saying don't post up there, but just be cognizant. Know the rules before you do it, and don't get burned and then complain later. But if you post your images up there, what happens legally, according to the Copyright Office, is they have been published already, right? So if your images are published and then you decide I want to copyright them after someone litigates against you, you can't go back in time because you've already published them. In other words, if you put up an image that hey, I created this awesome portrait, I want to brag in front of all my friends, I'm going to post it on Facebook and get a lot of likes. So if you do that and you haven't copyrighted that image, and then a month later you see that image in a magazine and you say, oh man, I better copyright that real quick so I can go litigate against those people, you can't, because it's already been published, right? So just be aware of the rules, and I would read read the Copyright Zone. That's the name of their book, Ed and Jack's book. Definitely read that book, because it goes into detail on what you're giving up by posting online. So copyright your stuff before you post it online if you can, or only post things online that you don't care a whole lot about, or do something to it before you put it on Facebook. There's a lot of things you can do, but just don't be naive about when you put things up there that, even though they say they're not going to do anything with it, they could. And as you know, on this planet, anything that can happen usually does. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ryan wants to know, do you gain more clients with outbound marketing or inbound marketing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So outbound marketing, yeah, it depends. That's a tough question. It depends on who your audiences are and what the end result or what your goals are. There's, on the side of outbound marketing, you should always have some sort of flow in place for doing that. And then same with inbound marketing. So, there's no more or less. Those questions that ask me to quantify things, it's hard to quantify something without knowing more about your business and what your end goals are. So again, you got to rewind. I'm not dodging it, but you have to rewind back and look at what you're trying to do and where you are in business, and then you can kind of answer that question for yourself.
Okay. All right, let's go to Sue Ann. She asks, how much time do you devote to photography skills versus marketing skills?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm weird. So I'm weird. I get entertained by learning about photography and marketing. And I don't know, my brain specifically flips back and forth, because I have a business that is about photography that I need to market using marketing. So I built my habit trail, or the cage that I live in. So for me, I think the majority of my week is spent doing non-photography things lately. I might spend one day, if I'm lucky, 2 days shooting or doing something with my camera. and that's an unfortunate side effect of, I guess, the success of TWIP, because most of my time is spent talking about photography, kind of like I am now. Most of my time is spent talking about photography rather than actually doing it, and it's a side effect of the whole thing that we're building with the whole TWIP network. So yeah, I wish I had more time to shoot, but as we get more and more successful with the network, I'm finding myself with less and less time.
All right, Dan's got an interesting question. He wants to know, how do I promote myself as a couples photographer when most of my work currently is around family, sports, and models?
Oh, great question. Yeah, that's easy. I mean, you can, people are visual, right? So if you have couples in your portfolio and on your page, then, you're going to grab it, you're going to bring those people in. But your question might be, okay, though, how do I get them if most of my clients are not that? No one knows the relationship status of the people in your photos. So you can hire friends, hire some good-looking friends, get some people that you work with in your day job if that's what you're still doing. Get other photographers and pose them as couples and get some awesome shots. Use your skills and put them on your site, and use them until you can get actual couples to replace those images with.
Cool. Okay. Here is a technical question, software question. Dale wants to know what content management system you use for building websites.
I use WordPress. There's a couple of them out there. The two that most people I know and that I use. I use WordPress for a couple of reasons, and I'll go into that in a second. But then there's also Squarespace, which is pretty cool for other reasons. Now I use WordPress because the This Week in Photo Network site it's fairly complicated in how it works and the different things that are involved in there, because there's commerce, there's membership areas, it's serving up podcasts all day long, it's doing a number of things. I would have used a service if I was doing something less intricate than the This Week in Photo Network. I probably would have used something like Squarespace, which is it's a way to build your site in the cloud, right? And it's easy. There's other alternatives out there too. Like there's this new one called Grid, or The Grid, or Grid. If you Google it, you'll find it. Google Grid and website design or web hosting or something, and you'll find it. And the benefit of using a cloud-based managed solution like the Grid or Squarespace is that they're always bulletproof. They're always, they're maintaining the entire back end and all the different extensions and all the stuff. That's all taken care of, and you can concentrate on what you like doing, which is marketing and writing your blog posts and putting cool images up there for people to look at. In the case of WordPress, it's much more technical. So because we own the WordPress install, we're responsible for everything. So if we, for some reason, install a bad plugin on the site and it takes things down, guess who gets to fix that? We do. We can't sit in a support ticket to have it fixed. So if you are just getting started and you say you want to build a beautiful, slick-looking, simple site, and you might have aspirations to put some commerce, like some ebooks or downloadable audio files or something on it later, I would use a service like Squarespace. If you're thinking that you want to build something much more involved, like This Week in Photo, or the Wall Street Journal is WordPress, Huffington Post is WordPress. So these kinds of industrial type sites, if you think you're going to need that level of scale, then I would start with WordPress.
Cool. Okay. Jared would like to know, should I try to connect with local talent and model agencies for work?
So it depends on what you mean. So to get clients to shoot, yeah, absolutely. Why not? But if you're talking about getting people to practice on, not necessarily. I mean, well, there's two ways. One of the photographers that has been on TWIP, Lucas Passmore, he's a model and fashion photographer down in LA. He swears by getting models from agencies, and that's you get what you pay for kind of metaphor. But that's for testing and building your portfolio and that sort of thing. I tend to agree with him for that, but also I wouldn't discount the amateurs that you find online. So on sites like Model Mayhem, they get a bad rap for a lot of stuff, but if you don't have a whole lot of money and you're just trying to find a couple of local people to shoot to get going, it's not a bad way to go. Now, if you're talking specifically about finding paying clients, absolutely as well. In fact, on thisweekinphoto.com in our store, we have a getting started in fashion photography course on there that's built by Lucas Passmore. And in it, he talks about how exactly to do that. How do you approach an agency to get them to start sending you models that that will be clients of yours instead of just, people to practice on. So, yeah, there's again, there's many answers to that, but yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with approaching agencies. In fact, like I said, like what Lucas says, you get what you pay for.
Cool. Okay. Let's go to Dan. He wants to know specifically about photographing sporting events. What's the best way to market your photographs to the audience of the players? Would you suggest flyers be passed around or some other method?
Oh, that's really interesting. See, all these questions are perfect. These are timely questions. So there's this, and I'm excited to share this because I'm just learning about this. There's this new service out there called Snapeasy. I think it's called Snapizzi, Snapeasy. And what they do is they specifically target those kind of events. So they allow you to tag the photos so that later someone can come back and purchase that photo. Now, let's say it's a sporting event. Let's say it's a Little League game. And, you know that there's a bunch of parents that are going to want pictures of their kid at bat. So how do you get that? So their service makes it easy for you to tag their kid at bat and then go back to that parent so that they can look at a grid and say, yeah, this is my kid. So yeah, I would use a service like that. These are new services that have specifically come along to help fix those kinds of issues. And there's a couple of them out there that do things like that, but I would definitely check into that one. It's called Snapeasy, Snapizzi.
Okay, so Suzanne has a bit of an off-the-wall question. She wants to know if you have any specific advice for fine art photography wannabes.
Specific advice for fine art photography wannabes. Um, yeah, well, I mean, in the context of this presentation, I'm assuming that she's talking about marketing and not creative, but I'll give a little bit on both of those. So if you're a fine artist and you want to sell your work, again, go back into this deck, this presentation, look at number one, right? So begin with the end in mind. What's your goal? Is your goal to what's success look like? Is it to I want a business and I want to be selling in number of gallery prints every month? What's that number? Or is it that I define success as having a gallery show in New York City or LA, or San Francisco? That's my end goal. So figure out what that goal is and then start working backwards from there. For example, if the goal, like in the first example, if the goal is to generate revenue, you want to sell these things, then you need to be speaking to people that are speaking the vernacular of people that would be your likely clients online and social media. That's how so you're not posting about cats or political issues or any of that stuff. You're writing posts that are specifically targeted at positioning yourself as a fine artist to your audience, right? So, and then secondarily, if your goal is to build a gallery, work backwards. Look at people that have built galleries, or that have had successful gallery shows and sold $100,000 prints from those gallery shows. Find them, maybe even talk to them, ask for mentorship. How do you do that? I want to do that someday, and then move forward. A lot of the stuff is you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel for everything. People are surprisingly open with their with sharing knowledge and helping other people out these days. So, if it's the latter, go talk to someone that's already done it and kind of get an idea of how they did it and try to replicate it in your town. You might even be able to do a Skype conversation with somebody and get some ideas from them.
Frederick, a couple of people are asking if you would mention the name of the tool that you were just talking about before, the Snapeasy, something similar to that. Could you give that name again?
It's Snapeasy. I'm full screen now, so I can't dive into it. But yeah, it's I think it's Snapizzi, and I will yeah, I'll find the URL for sure and share it with you guys so that you can send it out later.
Okay, cool. All right, Shauna wants to know what your thoughts on photo contests are.
Photo contests. Yeah, So two sides of that. So there's two sides. So you could be talking about running a photo contest, or you could be talking about entering a photo contest. So let's take both of those. On the side of running a photo contest for your site, sort of to bring up attention to your site. Remember, I mean, this is an exercise in focus, right? So what are your goals, right? What are your main goals for what you're trying to do in business? Are your goals, and who are you speaking to? Who's that avatar? Are you speaking to other photographers, or are you speaking to clients? And are your clients really going to enter photo contests? So you got to answer those questions. On the other side of it, entering photo contests, I think they're fine and they're awesome, and they help you kind of get off the couch and get out there and shoot and give you a goal to kind of, you know, be focused about your photography. However, there are some nefarious photo contests out there. So be sure to read the terms and service of these photo contests, because there's some of them that are really just image harvesting ploys, right? So they'll run this photo contest and you sign up on the fine print, and really they're just trying to build a little photo agency with your imagery. So obviously the vast majority of them are legit, but just be cognizant, just like everything else. The internet has good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. Just keep your eyes open in the bad neighborhoods and you'll be fine.
Okay, so Jay wants to know regarding model releases, how they work in social media.
Model releases and how they work in social media. Well, a model release is a model release. So when there's multiple answers to this. So one answer is in a court of law, and this comes, I'm reciting what Jack Reznicki and Ed Greenberg told me. So I asked them when I interviewed them specifically about model releases and how to use them. Their advice, and I'm paraphrasing, but their advice was, don't use digital model releases. That's what they said, because you can't, judges aren't necessarily going to believe something that's digital and made of pixels. They want to see a printed ink on paper signature model release, which means you as a photographer, if you're shooting and you say it's a model shoot or whatever, you need to have a stack of model releases in your bag. They could be small, but you need physical model releases. And the question was about social media. So assuming that you're talking about, okay, if you go out, say you're a street photographer and you go out, say you're in the San Francisco area and you hit Chinatown, you do a bunch of shots, and you get a great shot of somebody standing in front of a shop and you want to post that online, do you need a model release for that? The law says no, you don't need a model release for that. Again, check with your attorney. But you don't need a model release for that because it was taken in a public place and there's no expectation of privacy in a public place. So you could post that online. However, where it gets a little sticky is if you decide to sell that photo of someone's likeness. Then you would need a model release from that person because you're generating revenue from it. Just to post it, you don't need one, but if you're going to generate revenue from it, then you want to talk to a lawyer.
Okay, we've got a question that we kind of, I think, approached already, but might be a different way to talk about this from Kenny. He wants to know if iStock is a good way to get clients and sites like iStock.
To get clients? No. I would have to say no. I mean, those sites I use those sites for a couple of reasons. I mean, we use Shutterstock and iStock, and now Adobe has stock photography built into the Creative Cloud. As a consumer, I love those sites because, well, as a consumer and a content creator that runs a blog, I mean, it's made my life easier to use those, to buy images from those sites. But talking to the contributors of those sites, that some of the top contributors that make the top level of income, they're not making as much income as they used to make on those sites, and the ones that I talk to at least say that they could probably be making more money doing other things. So, the stock photography space has shifted a little bit. There are other services out there that are still charging good amounts of money. Like my friend Martin Bailey is a member of one of them. I can't, the name of it escapes me, but he moved from one of the so-called micro stock services into this more expensive elite kind of service because of the kind of the downfall in income. So, on the other hand, though, if you're just doing this stuff for fun and you're shooting and the images were just going to be sitting on your hard drive gathering dust anyway, why not put them up on an iStock or something to generate a couple of dollars a month extra? But just don't go into it thinking that you're going to finance your Tesla with income from your microstock photography.
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase a question from Jared. He basically would like to know, what are the 1 to 2 best platforms where a beginner can start to get recognized and sell their work?
Oh, wow, really good question. So the one or two platforms where a beginner can get recognized and to start sell their work. Um, wow. Well, there's no like Carnegie Hall for photographers, right? So it's all distributed and it's genre based. So like the easy answer to that question, or the simple Occam's razor answer to that question, would be social media, right? So social media and Facebook is divided into multiple different facets, and depending on who's looking at what, it could be all things or nothing to all people. So I would start building up your social media following and making sure you're talking to the avatar of the people that you want to perceive you as whatever you want to be perceived as. So I would use that. There's no like one place where you can say, okay, I need to present my work here, and if I do that, then people will take me seriously. It's more of, this is the age of your blog speaks for you, your website, your portfolio, the postings that you put online, your Facebook posts, your Twitter posts, your LinkedIn posts, all that stuff in aggregate, people look at and can make decisions on who you are as a photographer and as a person based on what you have saying and what you are saying and doing online. So that all those things together are your Carnegie Hall.
Okay, we've got the last couple of questions here, and they are around pricing, essentially. The first one's from Doug. He asks, do you prefer to charge an hourly rate or sell rights to a photo or some sort of combination?
So me personally, when I'm shooting, so for client jobs, like for example, I have several clients in San Francisco, some big, some small, and generally what I do is I have a day rate. I have a half day rate and a day rate, and one is larger than the other, obviously, and that makes it easy for me to go in and feel like I'm being compensated for what I'm doing. And for those kinds of jobs, when I go in and shoot them, uh, you know, the the basic flow is they hire me, I show up, I shoot the gig, whether it's corporate portraits or environmental portraits or product photography or whatever. I do it. If it's an on-site thing, I go in there, I do it, knock it out of the park. Within 24 to 48 hours, the images are ready and online in a passworded gallery. They pay the money, rinse and repeat. So it's not like, okay, it's per image or per whatever metric you want to throw in there. I just keep it really, really simple with a half-day rate and a day rate. Now, my half-day rate and day rate are on the expensive side, so you get what you pay for, but in the end, I feel like I'm compensated. When I'm on the drive home back to my house, I don't feel like, wow, I really didn't make any money on that. I drive home thinking, okay, awesome, I got some great shots, and I was paid for it, and I feel good about that. So then, in the end, that's where you want to be.
I think that wraps us up, Frederick. I mean, thank you on behalf of everyone listening. You gave us some extremely valuable information, so we appreciate your expertise and your time immensely.
You're welcome. My pleasure. It was a ton of fun doing this. I mean, when I was building this deck, to be honest with you, I could have built it to be 3 hours long, but but unfortunately, we only had 90 minutes. So this was fun. Thank you. I was honored to do the presentation.
We're honored to have you. For everyone still on, check out Frederick's podcast, This Week in Photo, and frederickvan.com to get more of his expertise and to learn more about him. And don't forget to check out iFi as well. Big shout out, thanks to iFi for hosting this. We will be back again next month with another educational photography webinar. Stay tuned for that. And thanks everyone for tuning in today.